Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Let's dive into a story that's making a lot of noise and honestly raising some eyebrows. Democrats in Congress have just released new documents related to Jeffrey Epstein, and they're not just any documents, they're naming some pretty big names from politics and tech. The release is only 6 pages long, but even those 6 pages are enough to get people talking. So what's inside and what does it all mean? Let's break it down together. First off, these pages come from material provided to Congress by the Department of Justice. They're heavily redacted, which means lots of black bars covering details, but still, the parts we can see are explosive. Among the names that show up are Elon Musk, Thiel, Steve Bannon, and even Prince Andrew. Now, before we jump to conclusions, let's remember, being mentioned in a document doesn't automatically mean guilt or wrongdoing. But it does raise a huge question. How close were these people to Epstein, and why were their names in his files at all? What do you think? Should simply being connected to Epstein be enough to spark deeper investigations? Here's what the documents reveal in more detail. There's a note about Elon Musk potentially visiting Epstein's private island in December of 2014. There's mention of Thiel having lunch with Epstein in 2017. Steve Bannon, who was a key strategist for Donald Trump, is listed for a breakfast meeting in 2019, just months before Epstein's arrest. And then Prince Andrew's name shows up on a flight manifest from the year 2000, which ties back into the allegations that have surrounded him for years. There's even a financial record from that same year showing a payment to someone listed as Andrew for massage, exercise, and yoga. That one in particular makes you wonder, what was really going on behind the scenes? Now, reactions to these revelations have been intense. Democrats say releasing the documents is about transparency and justice for Epstein's victims. They argue that every new page brings us closer to understanding the full scope of Epstein's network. Republicans, on the other hand, are pushing back hard. They're accusing Democrats of being selective, of cherry-picking which names to release in order to damage conservatives while protecting Democrats who might also have ties to Epstein. That's a pretty serious accusation, right? It makes you wonder, do you think the public is really getting the full story, or are we only being shown the parts that benefit one side politically? Some Democrats, like Congressman Eric Swalwell, are even tying this back to Trump, saying that his connections to Epstein should be investigated as well. Republicans are calling all of this old news and accusing Democrats of politicizing victims' trauma. And meanwhile, the bigger fight is over whether all the Epstein files should be released. Democrats are now pushing a petition that would force a full vote in the House to make every document public. But here's the catch. Even if it passes in the House, it still has to make it through the Senate and then get the president's signature. And Trump has repeatedly dismissed the Epstein controversy as, in his words, a Democrat hoax. So where does that leave us? We've got 6 new pages that raise more questions than they answer. Like, why were these specific names redacted and then released now? Why only 6 pages when there are reportedly hundreds of documents out there? And most importantly, will any of this actually lead to accountability? Because at the end of the day, the people who matter most here are Epstein's victims, the survivors who have been waiting years for the truth to come out. Do you think naming names is enough? Or should there be criminal investigations that follow? The whole situation shines a light on a much bigger issue too, how power and privilege allow certain people to avoid scrutiny. Epstein's circle wasn't just about one man's crimes. It was about the systems and people that enabled him, protected him, and maybe even joined him. And when we see names from politics, technology, and royalty all showing up in the same documents, it's hard not to ask, how deep does this go, and how many people in positions of influence knew more than they're admitting? At this point, it feels like the Epstein story is less about what happened in the past and more about whether our institutions are even capable of holding powerful people accountable. If Congress can't bring itself to release the full files, what message does that send? And if names keep trickling out in little batches, do we risk this becoming just another political football instead of a real search for justice? I'd love to hear what you think. Should all the documents be made public, no matter who gets implicated? Or is there a danger in releasing everything without context, possibly smearing people who are only casually connected? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this is one of those stories where the debate is almost as important as the news itself. Thanks so much for watching and hanging out with me today. If you found this breakdown helpful or thought-provoking, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future updates. This story is still unfolding, and we'll be following it closely. Until next time, take care and stay curious.